Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Heroine Had an Affair with My Fiance. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! Long ago, back when an evil dragon was terrorizing the empire, a group of warriors were able to subdue it with much effort. However, before it succumbs to death, the dragon cursed the warriors' leader along with the empire's first emperor. Centuries later, the crown prince is considered the most powerful person in the history of the empire. Unfortunately, the curse upon his bloodline manifested in him, and he turned into a hideous creature upon his coming of age. When all his hope is almost lost, a person appears before him, Ciel I. She, the heroine of the novel, The Evil Dragon Doesn't Bite, is the only person capable of dispelling the curse and saving the prince using her holy purification power. At present, Ciel sits before Ciel I, confessing that she has a lover. Ciel I concludes that since the heroine has fallen in love, this means that the original story is beginning its course. This means that she'll die soon. You see, Ciel I is engaged with Duval Esset, the villain in the novel. In the story, he harassed Ciel until the crown prince put him to death. Unfortunately, as his wife, the original Ciel I was dragged along with him to the guillotine simply because they were married. Why did she have to transmigrate into poor Ciel of Laverin's body? She is now at risk of suffering her fate too. In order to try to save herself, Ciel I rescues the female lead from the slums she was from. She befriends her and helps her enter society as a proper lady. All she has to do is break off her engagement with Duval. Ciel is once again calling her attention, so Ciel I asks her who her lover is. At first, the girl is hesitant, stating that Ciel I will not like the man she loves. After some coaxing, she reveals that instead of the crown prince, Ciel's lover is Duval himself. What kind of friend steals her friend's fiancé? Honestly, I expected more from this supposed female lead. To say that Ciel I is shocked is an understatement. Ciel, to her credit, is apologetic, but then she asks her to break up with Duval for her sake. I mean, I think that Duval is a total jerk, but the audacity of this woman. Ciel I can't believe that the heroine has fallen in love with her trash of a fiancé. Right then, Duval enters the room harshly, and Ciel instantly goes to embrace him out of distress. The guy then looks at Ciel I as if she is at fault. How can he look like that when they are the ones having an affair? His shamelessness is next level. Duval then announces that he wants to break off their engagement. Meanwhile, Ciel still insists that they remain friends. Ciel I, on the other hand, can't understand the crazy situation she is suddenly in. That night, Ciel I is unable to fall asleep, recalling the distressing events earlier. She thought that getting close to Ciel might help her avoid execution, but she did not expect this twist at all. Why are all the men around her cheaters? She has experienced a similar situation back in her own world when her partner shamelessly cheated on her. Unexpectedly, a letter appears on her desk. Turns out it's from the crown prince asking for her help with his engagement. She has no choice but to tell him the truth, informing him that his prospective fiancé is currently involved with her fiancé. The enchanted letter instantly reveals a reply, telling her that the palace is now discussing the engagement. She is now even more confused because everyone's giving her different stories. Duval and Ciel want to be engaged with each other, but then the palace now insists on pushing through with the engagement. Why don't they discuss this among themselves instead? Ciel I refuses to put up with this and is treated like a fool. So she writes a letter to the crown prince telling him to have an affair with her to get back on their cheating fiancés. After all, since everyone is allowed to be wild, then why can't she? She regrets her decision just a week after writing the letter. The prince is yet to give a reply, and now she fears that she'll get arrested for lèse-majesté, aka offending the sovereign power any time now. Poor Ciel I. But then again, people just don't straight out ask someone to have an affair with them. She has a full-blown breakdown because of her recklessness. Since she did not have a proper meal due to her ever-growing problems, May, her loyal maid, is worried about her. She sheds tears for her, assuming that her miss is distraught because of Duval and Ciel's treachery. Ciel I tries to calm her down, but the maid is feeling vindictive on her behalf. May declares that she has found a way to annihilate those two. She shows her the emblem of the Ciel Love Manipulation Guide, an organization that exposes affairs. She drags Ciel I to a shady part of town to meet with the so-called leader of the guild. The master enthusiastically greets them with bright smiles. However, he insists that only the client gets to enter. When they enter, it is revealed that Ciel I is the true master of the guild, and she is not the least bit happy that the existence of her organization has been leaked far and wide. Ciel I reprimands later, her business partner, for expanding the business without her permission. He reasons that the income is too lucrative, which is why he did it. He is basically sprawled on the ground just to ask for her forgiveness. He even tells her how unfair she is. After all, he did decorate the place using the commission money from the expansion. However, she makes it clear that the only reason she has created this guild is so she can find evidence that Duval is cheating on her and use it to break up with him. Unfortunately, the guild is having a hard time because Duval is a slimy cheater who hides his affair quite skillfully. Even though there are rumors, it is not enough to break up their engagement. But then again, Duval is the one who's asking to cancel the engagement now, so finding evidence is probably not necessary anymore. Still, she wants Later to look for them just to be sure. Later then informs her that a guest has been coming to the guild, and this person is aware that he is not the true master. The mysterious person insists on meeting with her, claiming that someone has asked him to have a revenge affair with her. He has something to ask about that matter. At this point, Ciel I begins speculating that this person might be the Crown Prince. After all, what are the odds that someone has also suggested a revenge affair to someone else? But then she convinces herself that the Crown Prince would never set foot in a place like this. She decides to meet this person, but not without proper precautions. She uses a transformation artifact as well as a mask, so her voice and appearance will be unrecognizable. The first thing she notes when she opens the door is the distinctive scent of roses. The second thing is the gorgeous appearance of the man who comes to see her. Even with a mask, the guy definitely stands out, especially because of his golden eyes. The man then insists that she remove her mask. Taking offense, Ciel I threatens to leave, but the man stops her. He apologizes, saying that he merely wants to confirm her identity. The man then reveals the reason he is there, pretending that he is asking for a friend. As the man speaks of his friend's situation, the more suspicious Ciel I is that it is her own story. This can only mean that this man is the Crown Prince. He is here to ask for advice because of the letter she sent. The prince then tells her that his friend doesn't actually have a fiancé. When she hears this, she realizes that the person before her is not the prince, for she is pretty sure that the Crown Prince is engaged with Tyrael. She calms down and listens as the person speculates if the person who asks for the affair might have some special feelings for him. He keeps forgetting that he is supposed to ask for a friend. Knowing that she'll get paid by answering such an easy question, she plasters her capitalist smile on and tells him that the young lady thinks highly of him. With a firm resolve, the man declares that he will accept the lady's proposal. Suddenly, Ciel I feels envious of the lady in question. Seems like her crush has accepted her rather unconventional proposal. Ciel I asks for the girl's name, but the man suddenly exudes a strange aura and orders her to stand up. Ciel I's body, for some reason, feels strange, and she does what he asks. He commands her to forget everything he said that day, and she instantly agrees. But then he comes closer, intending to remove her mask. Desperate to keep her identity a secret, Ciel I manages to get control of her body and steps away from the man. However, she seems to have forgotten what had occurred just moments ago. Despite his surprise that she manages to get away from his ability, the mysterious man simply bids her farewell. Days later, Ciel I is forced to stay at the guild and work just to evade May's questions regarding her appointment with the guild. She explains to Later that she can't very well reveal the truth to May because for her, as for everyone else, Ciel I Laverins is simply a weak girl inside and out. After laughing at her expense, he points out the doll she is making, accusing her of cursing someone with it. However, the doll is not what he thinks it is. It is actually an adorable replica of her favorite character in the novel, Crown Prince Highness himself. Later on, she goes shopping for some necessary items that would allow her to travel conveniently. She feels like everything is too late now. There will definitely be a love triangle between Tyrael, Duval, and Highness. Before she gets involved, she plans to leave the Empire. Surprisingly, a guest has been waiting for her when she arrives back home. That person is none other than Crown Prince Highness himself. Ciel I tries to calm herself, inviting the prince to the living room. Highness then charmingly gives her a bouquet of flowers. When they are settled, the prince notes that despite not having an appointment, she graciously received him. She can't very well tell him that she knows that he is the Crown Prince, so she argues that someone who brought flowers could not be dangerous. The prince then comments that she seems to be planning for a long trip based on the things she has bought. The man then declares that he has come to accept her proposal. This gives Ciel I the opportunity to greet him properly. He apologizes for not inviting her to the palace immediately, and she does her best to flatter him. Ciel I then formally introduced herself, and he did the same. Unexpectedly, he leans closer, gently taking hold of some strands of her hair. He declares that from then on, they are to be lovers. After using his charms for a second, the prince suddenly turns shy. Ciel I is quite bewildered that he can be both. Pick a lane, Rhinos. It's unfair for our hearts if you are charming and cute at the same time. Going back to business, Ciel I begins discussing her fiancé's betrayal. She clarifies that the contract has a clear purpose. Until she manages to break up with Duval, they will keep the contract. She asks him for his condition in turn, questioning if he wants a way to win his fiancée back. However, his entire mood changes, asking her what will happen if he doesn't actually have a fiancée. Reasonably, she answers that if he doesn't have one, then he doesn't have to sign a contract with her. This makes the prince think for a second, and then promptly tells her to forget what he said just then. He declares that he accepts her contract and that he will maintain a relationship with her until his fiancée returns to him, and so the two of them are in agreement. They even had to try out the limit to how close they could get to each other. Ciel I is definitely flustered, especially when up close and personal with someone as attractive as the crown prince. Oh, she is so lucky! Sometime later, in Rima's salon, a bunch of ladies are doing what rich and pampered women do when they get together. They gossip. The most prominent topic of the time, of course, is the affair between Duval and Tyrell. Their gossiping becomes even more intense when the couple in question enters the salon, flaunting their relationship for all to see. The ladies are outraged that Lady Puratina has betrayed Ciel I this way, especially since she is able to enter society because of Lady Labyrinth. What makes the drama go up a notch is when Ciel I arrives at the salon as well, with Rhinos. Things are about to go down. The two couples come face to face, and Duval has the audacity to look angry. The nerve of this man! When the gentlemen leave the ladies alone in the salon, Tyrell tries to talk to Ciel I. Unfortunately, a lady swoops in to take Ciel I away from that awkward conversation. Ha! That's what you get! You betray her, but you still want to be friends with her? What is wrong with you? When Ciel I is asked who is the man she was with, she lies that he is someone she met at the temple. After that day, she and Rhinos are inseparable. Since she manages to trample on trashy Duval's pride, the man is definitely angry. However, this is not enough to break up their engagement. She needs to strike harder. With that thought in mind, she requests for the prince to go with her to the clothing store. The next day, May is going on a rant about the man Ciel I is apparently dating. She insists that her lady deserves someone better than some stranger. As they make their way downstairs, May declares loudly that only someone rich and handsome deserves Ciel I, the crown prince in particular. Surprisingly, the prince is already waiting for her downstairs, and he has heard May's tirade. She tries to stop May from speaking, for she still hasn't noticed the prince, but it's too late. Rather than be annoyed, our handsome prince smiles charmingly and introduces himself as the prince in front of the ladies. In the carriage, the prince notes that her maid loves Ciel I so much. He looks incredibly amused by what happened that morning. Meanwhile, Ciel I is totally embarrassed, asking him to forgive May. The prince assures her that he did not take offense. He is honestly quite pleased that he is the only one who could possibly reach the standard that is considered suitable for Ciel I. With her top-tier social skills, she once again flatters Rhinos, declaring him the most handsome guy in the world. She is so shameless with her compliments. The prince ends up being embarrassed by her words instead. She then giggles upon seeing his cute side. They eventually arrive at the clothing store, and the way they are received only incenses her suspicion even more. The owner is clearly terrified that she has arrived without notice, which means that the rumors are true. Duval is in the store to buy a dress for Tyrell. She insists on entering the store. With a smug look on her face, she vows to strike hard. When Duval finds the two of them standing awfully close, the guy reacts like he's been wronged. He becomes even more enraged when Ciel I admits that Rhinos is indeed her lover. Resigned, Duval admits defeat, saying that he'll do whatever she wants. He then proceeds to declare that Ciel I is the only one he loves. Oh, this pathetic man is such a two-faced lying cheater! Naturally, Ciel I calls Duval crazy. When Rhinos comments about the maddening situation, Duval gets in his face, telling him to get lost. Of course, Reno does not back down, challenging Duval even more. Fortunately, Ciel I interferes before the situation escalates. She even notes just how good the prince is when it comes to acting. OMG, girl, that man just wants to defend your honor. He is definitely not acting. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her. It's Tyrael. She notices that the dress her ex-friend is wearing is for engagement. She can't believe that Duval has taken Tyrael to pick out an engagement dress at the same time he confessed to her. What a total jerk! Tyrael is quite curious about who Highness is. Ciel I is quite surprised that the two of them do not know each other. She assumes that the engagement between them was done without them meeting one another. The prince takes hold of Ciel I's hand and introduces himself as Ciel I's lover. Angrily, Duval grabs Ciel I's arm, demanding to speak with her in private. Highness is quick to hold her to him, telling Duval that he can't do whatever he wants with someone else's lover. Duval tells him to get lost once again, shouting that Ciel I is his fiancée. Ciel I then points out that Tyrael is standing right there wearing an engagement dress for God's sake. Ciel I even tells Tyrael that Duval confessed to her only moments ago. Tyrael begins weeping, asking Duval for the truth. Of course, Duval denies everything, assuring her that she's the only one he loves. He is making it seem like Ciel I is a liar. After that whole ordeal, Ciel I and Highness are about to ride the carriage. She tells him how tired she is, but still, she feels like she has won. He asks her how she ends up with Duval, and she replies that it's because of family business. The prince worries that Duval will not let her go, but she reveals that he is the one who suggested canceling the engagement. She even has a recording of it. Ciel I is then curious why the engagement between the prince and Tyrael has been done when they've never met before. The prince gives his timid answer, but she persists. She asks him how he felt upon meeting Tyrael earlier. In the novel, his heart is supposed to beat fast when he first sees her. He falls in love that way. To her surprise, Highness confesses that his heart beats fast because he is with her. He tells her that it has been his pleasure acting as her lover. She replies that it is her honor as well. She assures him that their charade will be over soon enough. At this point, Ciel I is confident that the breakup will proceed smoothly. Unfortunately, things are more complicated than they seem. Later on, Duval barges into her office, telling her that he is no longer willing to break off the engagement. Ciel I cannot even fathom Duval Essett and his changing views about their divorce. She thought he had his rational moments, but ultimately, he's just one big baby. A stupid one at that. Ciel I then reminds him that despite his newfound reluctance on their divorce, they already have an agreement. What's more, she also has enough evidence for it, so by law, they're allowed to call off their marriage. She then proceeds to play the recording on her magical tool, showing Duval and Miss Puratina in his arms, clearly saying he wants a divorce from Ciel I. That's what's called a checkmate move for Ciel I. But suddenly, Duval grabs the recording and smashes it to the ground. Fortunately, it seems that Ciel I is well prepared, saying that she has plenty of them, even showing him another one. Duval isn't deterred, as he even offers to have Ciel I's lover taken care of if he leaves her. When she tries to retort back, Duval declares that she is his fiancée. Ciel I takes this in and immediately starts laughing at him. Unfortunately, Duval resorts to blackmail, questioning whether or not Ciel I's parents, who got out of poverty because of their marriage, would allow their divorce. But with much confidence, Ciel I stands her ground, saying she can't pay back whatever sum of money they're talking about. She gives him an ultimatum, 3 days to finish writing up the divorce papers. She then calls her maid to escort the guest out, effectively stopping the conversation. However, Duval still leaves with a threat. Anyway, May rushes forward to clean the rune magical tool because of all the glass shards. She also relays that no answers have come from Count Vulpin. That's troubling, considering Ciel I has asked the Count to sign the divorce papers. May then gives her a letter from Lidsay. The contents of it prompt Ciel I to immediately go to the promenade to catch the Count. But she isn't alone. Turns out the Crown Prince insisted on joining her on her trip. Ciel I apologizes since they've been waiting for an hour, thinking Prince Highness is having a hard time because of her. She makes it clear that he didn't have to come, but Highness says it might be dangerous. Even though she only needs a signature? The reason why Count Vulpin's signature is needed is because the officiant of the wedding must sign the divorce papers for it to be complete. Highness warns the lady to be careful, but later on he suddenly grabs her hands, asking Ciel I if she likes candy. Turns out the prince noticed a cotton candy shop nearby. The prince reveals that he hasn't had candy, so Ciel I decides to prank him a little by telling him to wash his cotton candy. She observes him pouting like a cute little child, and she playfully says the prince has a cute side. Their moment gets interrupted, though, when they spot Count Valten nearby. Night falls, and Count Valten cautiously walks through the streets. He begins to think that he's being followed, but he decides to dismiss it. That is, until he runs into Lady Ciel I just in front of his path. Ciel I greets him, noting how Valten has been avoiding her. The Count then thinks it's wise to run away, but he gets blocked by Highness himself. And so the three find themselves in a room where Ciel I keeps questioning the still silent Count. Valten seems to be wary of Highness. Ciel I notices this and assures him that he cannot escape, so he might as well talk with her. Unfortunately, the first thing that comes out of Valten's mouth is his refusal to sign the divorce papers, fearing a quarrel will arise with Marquise Duval. Ciel I then questions whether or not Duval had bribed him, but the Count gives her a cryptic answer, saying all he hopes is that she and Duval can mend their relationship. That sounds a little bit like gaslighting, don't you think? Anyway, Ciel I takes this as the last straw for negotiations, and she showcases her powers, likely from being a member of the Laveren's family, saying that if Valten won't have a conversation, then she'll be happy to oblige. Ciel I has powers? Powers that emanate a dark and ominous aura? Highness gets alerted with the sudden development, calling out to Ciel I, but she keeps her focus on the Count. Poor Valten can only shout for help as dark hands start reaching for him, as Ciel I merely fixes her gaze at him. Seriously, what is with this sudden villain vibe? Fortunately, Highness is there to shake her out of it, though he's mainly concerned about her fainting. Valten cowers at Ciel I's abuse of power, but she can't even respond, dizzy from exerting her skills. And so, Highness convinces her to leave, since they can't pry anything out of the Count anyways. Still, Ciel I declares that she'll find a way to complete the divorce. Actually, there's no other way if Count Valten doesn't sign, something Ciel I admits as she plays with her Highness doll the next day. Lucky for her, her assistant from her guild arrives, bearing good news. It was another case about a man cheating on his wife, and Ciel I is surprised to find out about Count Valten. What's more interesting is that his mistress is Layla Isit, Duval's sister. Later even managed to acquire evidence, another magical recording of Valten and Layla together. Ciel I remarks that her way ahead might be easier than she thought, right before praising later as the best VP of her guild. The upper class of society seems to be having a social event in a museum, an art gallery credited to none other than Count Duval Iset, apparently a man with a great love for art, who's there with his sister Layla. While older brother is being praised for his support of artists, Layla spots Count Valten in the crowd, causing the man to wave back with a hint of shyness. All the while, his wife observes her husband's behavior. Affairs are happening all around! Out of nowhere, a stranger approaches the rather dejected Countess Valten. He whispers something in her ears, and her eyes flash in shock. He hands her a magical recording tool, and it opens right in front of her. A projection of her husband, Count Valten, and Layla Iset immediately starts playing, with the man professing his love to his mistress. The cheater even planned their honeymoon! Of course, Count Valten and Layla are the first to react, just as the entire crowd starts recognizing and figuring out their love affair. Count Valten tries to reason first with his wife, saying they'll talk in private, but she runs away from him in tears. All the while, a smiling Ciel I happily considers if it's her turn to act in her wonderful plan. What a rather satisfying turn of events! Meanwhile, Countess Valten is understandably in shambles about the recent confirmation of her doubts. Accepting her relationship with the Count is over. She plans to prepare for a divorce when Lady Labyrinth, that's Ciel I for those that don't know, calls out to her. The two decide to talk over a cup of tea, and Ciel I, as if she wasn't the one to orchestrate the whole fiasco, pretends she's hearing the news of the Count's affair for the first time, just like most of the upper-class society present at the party. Countess Valten admits that she wants to leave her husband. The poor thing has fallen to gambling and drinking because she couldn't act on it. Worse, as Ciel I notices, the Count also seems to be hitting his wife. Unfortunately, the Count is adamant about not letting his wife go, and it's not out of love or devotion. The only reason is that if the Count divorces her, then he cannot continue to keep the title, meaning his social standing would collapse. Count Valten would go back to being Nix, his commoner name before being married into the upper social class. After listening to her story, Ciel I decides to advise the grieving Countess Valten. In her situation, she is the most suitable to step in and help. The Countess asks her why she's so willing to help, despite the situation not being involved. Though Ciela's doing it for the signature initially, she admits that she herself knows about the feeling of betrayal. And so, she asks the Countess to listen carefully. Count Duval's face scrunches with annoyance at the recent turn of events. He's pondering about what made Ciela change and how getting her attention isn't enough anymore. But more importantly, he's extremely vexed at the sudden appearance of Ciela's lover, which he doesn't know is the Crown Prince. Anyway, back to the present, the Count shouts in disbelief at his sister and Count Valten about their recent slip-up. Looks like all the cheaters have decided to convene. Layla instead begins reminding her brother of his promises, that they won't have any problems, and how Count Valten's allegedly stupid wife won't do anything about it. Duval tells her to shut up, as he's getting a headache thinking about all of this. Of course, the divorce will be bad, but not because of concern for his friend, but because it removes Valten of his Count status. And that is very bad for their business. So Duval states that they should act. If the recording crystal were to fall to government hands, then Count Valten's fall is ensured. His move is then to figure out a plan to protect Count Valten. Getting an idea, Layla beams as she shares it with the group. The cheaters-only exclusive group, I should say. Getting back on track, Layla suggests that they should frame Countess Valten with the same crime they're being accused of. If she's having an affair, then she herself will be in trouble. Count Valten thinks about it, initially pondering how Arya, Countess Valten's real name, stays in her room all day. Then a sudden thought hits him. She may not have a lover, but they can make her have one. A malicious smile creeps up as he suggests his trap. Meanwhile, Lady Arya and Ciela have just finished drafting their agreement papers. If the former would gain her countess status after her divorce, then she would sign the latter's own divorce papers. With that, Ciela asks Arya to stay for at least 2 weeks, reasoning that something bad might happen. Later that night, Ciela remarks how tiring her day was and how she seems to be missing something, only to find out that it was Rhinos. The Crown Prince is a little absent from the story lately. Turns out she's feeling a little bit guilty for all the things he's done for her. Anyway, she was thinking that she'll grant Rhinos a favor when a letter enters her room. It seems to be from her enemies, though it leaves her with little concern. Day after day, Ciela notices the positive changes separating with her husband had on Arya. However, according to the letter she received today, trouble will find them. Ciela holds Arya's hand, reassuring her that this is the Labyrinth family's castle, and she is its owner. Ciela again with the heroine with villainous vibes. As night falls on the Labyrinth castle, 2 rough-looking men emerge from the cover of the trees. Slowly but surely, they make their way into the castle through a window without so much as a sound. Oh, surely this must be Count Valten's evil plan. The men eventually find their way into a room, possibly where Arya is supposed to sleep. They see a figure in bed underneath the sheets. With a smile on his face, one of them threw back the covers while the other brandished ropes, only to find the bed empty. Suddenly, a voice calls out to them, asking if they're looking for something. They turn, and there she is, Ciela, standing menacingly with the moonlight against her back. If I didn't know any better, she might have been the main villain of the story. She starts toying with the trespassers. Treating them as kids, she warns them not to act like that at night, then suddenly shifts the mood with threats, saying that perhaps the 2 only went there to die. And it becomes even more darker because Ciela's powers start manifesting. The intruders were right to flee, but even running isn't enough to escape. Darkness envelops them, right as they feel something grabbing them. They only had a brief chance to recognize the Labyrinth family's power, as Ciela declares they're going to have fun. You know, they probably wouldn't have fun, Ciela. Moments pass, and the 2 awake to find themselves in an unfamiliar place. They argue about the misinformation on Ciela being weak, but they don't have enough time to do so, as various traps begin springing to life. They run to a gradually narrowing hallway, but they get distracted from a noise coming from above, and that's when they got hit. Screams start emanating, but from an orb-like sphere, which she calls Labyrinth, generated by Ciela's powers. Ciela herself, though, is still preoccupied at how Arya is the one being attacked when it's her husband that cheated. Anyway, she's got more to her powers. Ciela utters the word Cerberus, and the Hellhound appears out of nowhere with its middle head even answering yes, which creeps out Ciela. Turns out the Labyrinth family are descended from warriors that defeated the evil dragon with their special skills of being able to use evil souls. Use as in to command, with the evil souls obeying them and only them. The only drawback from their power is that it consumes too much for the person, weakening their body and brain. It's the reason for Ciela's sickness, and if she's not careful, that power might consume her. Anyway, she had Cerberus pull out the intruders from her labyrinth orb. The two actually didn't crack after Ciela first questioned them, but a threat to another trip inside the labyrinth did the trick. Meanwhile, Count Vultan is already sipping wine, thinking the task he set was already accomplished. He had the audacity to think Arya's actions caused him to take such dirty methods. However, a group of men suddenly burst forth looking for him. He had been placed under arrest for various crimes, and a teary Arya accompanied by Ciela watches tearfully from outside. Finally, Arya's plight has ended. Arya declares everything to be over, finally, but Ciela stops her. This just isn't revenge enough for what Count Vultan has done, saying that they should punish those who cheat. Meanwhile, the man in question, Count Nyx Vultan, or should I say, former Count, finds himself imprisoned all the way for himself. He laments about his current situation, one that's well-deserved, I should say, and even curses one of the women who put him behind bars. His silence and solitude gets interrupted, however, when Arya comes to visit him. Nyx is prideful enough to assume she's there to help him. He even calls her his wife all endearingly. Yucks! Nyx asks her for the bail money, saying it's his way out. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't even have money now. Nyx stops talking, though he notices Arya being silent. The first thing that Arya says when she speaks is that they should divorce. The man tries reaching out to her from behind bars, but she's adamant she doesn't want to live with him anymore. Arya gives him a written draft of their divorce papers, needing only his signature. The title of Countess, the castle, and all the properties will remain with Arya, and Nyx gets the gold mine. As soon as he hears this, Nyx snatches the document, eagerly wanting to sign. He thinks that Arya is making a foolish decision since she's basically giving him her source of wealth. After he signs the paper, Nyx's true personality begins to surface. He doesn't even hand the document over to Arya, but he lets it fall to the ground. With a very smug face, he declares he doesn't need her anymore since he retains ownership of the gold mine. That confidence is short-lived, though, as Ciela walks into the room. Nyx thinks he's got the best of Arya, but Ciela reveals he's now in huge debt. Turns out, Arya borrowed a lot of money, and the mine is closed and about to be sold anyway. Nyx really thought he finessed Arya out of all of her wealth. His face turns into that of a grotesque, sniveling man as he realizes his situation. With their business with the former Count done, Ciela says to Arya that they should leave. All the while, Nyx's shouts and cries for help to his ex-wife echoes around the prison. Back outside, Arya thanks Ciela for her help, and the latter wishes the former to truly find her happiness. Their joyous moment is cut short, though, when suddenly, Ciela collapses. When she awakes, she's already lying in her own bed with her maids tending after her. She is still very tired, though, and she doesn't even get up from her bed. As night falls, a shadow of a dragon is seen near Ciela. Ciela gets awakened from her sleep by a sudden noise. She also notices a cold breeze, though she's unsure if she ever opened a window. Suddenly, she notices a shadow creeping up to her, but this one's that of a human form, and is shocked to see the Crown Prince Rhinos of all people in her room. Like a kid caught in the act, Rhinos immediately begins explaining, saying he hadn't intended to enter her room, but he ended up doing it anyway. He doesn't even care that Ciela's still rubbing her eyes from just waking up. Speaking of Ciela, she questions whether she's dreaming right now since she's been thinking about Rhinos the entire day, and so she asks him to sit near her. Being the shy guy he is, Rhinos refuses, despite Ciela asking for a second time, saying he only visited in the first place to check up on her, and now he has to go. She, on the other hand, gets pissed that he seems to be disobedient despite being in her dreams. She actually thinks she's in a dream, lol. Ciela gets what she wants, though, and Reno sits down for a moment, although it's like 6 feet apart from each other. After a moment of silence, Rhinos again begins to explain how he ended up in her room, saying he truly has no ill intent. He did ask if she's surprised by him being there, to which she replies yes to, since it's like the 3rd floor of the castle and he did appear out of nowhere. Thankfully, Ciela credits it as being part of her dreams, and Rhinos takes this as an invitation to tell the truth, saying he flew up to enter her room. Ciela asks if Rhinos can fly, and so she begins prying about his supposed ability, even asking if he's a magician. When Rhinos finds it difficult to explain, Ciela decides to do a little bit of manipulation, faking that she's getting sick again and coughing. The concerned Rhinos had no choice but to oblige in order to keep the supposedly sick Ciela from talking further. Brother, you just got played! Renos reveals that he can transform into a dragon, and Ciel again convinces him to transform. But it's not the gruesome kind of dragon that he will become according to the novel, but a rather small, cute, babyish black dragon. He even follows every instruction from Ciel, the cute thing. Ciel eventually gets tired, so she and the dragon lay in bed. She asks him to stay with her through the night, and Renos the dragon obliges. The next morning, though, she's alone in bed, but there's a crease in her bed indicating someone had been there with her. In the southern regions, Ciela's parents enjoy their 2-week vacation. Just then, her father declares their intention to arrange her marriage upon their return. Although her mother, desiring her son to inherit the Count's wealth, approves of this decision, their self-congratulatory moment is interrupted by a letter from their daughter. The letter reveals that she has divorced Duval. Meanwhile, Tyrael paces happily at the thought that the office finally approved Ciela's divorce papers. Thinking that there won't be any obstacles to their trashy love, she visits Duval's office to talk about the engagement party. However, Duval isn't even happy to see her barging in without permission. When she starts to open up about their engagement, Duval finally shows his rotten intentions. According to this crappy man, he just used Tyrael to get Ciela's attention. In other words, Tyrael was just a mere tool for his selfish desires. Tyrael falls down to her knees, questioning Duval's confession to her. Geez, I don't even have an ounce of pity to defend this snake. Out of desperation to be with a trash bin, Tyrael asks if she can be Ciela's replacement. However, Duval clearly declares that she definitely can never be Ciela. Of course, a rotten trash like her can never become a precious gem. Tyrael feels ultimately shattered and defeated, but she can't just sit and fall into miserable despair. At the same time, Ciela and Renos are walking outside the mansion, him reaching for her forehead to check if she still has a fever. Suddenly, she remembers that they met in her dreams, where he also touched her forehead with his little paws. Just at the thought of it, Ciela's face blushes, blaming the weather for being hotter than usual. Also, she is finally free from being betrothed to a narcissistic man. Given that, she's happy to meet Renos in a worry-free manner. This time, Renos bravely confesses that he wants her to stay close to him. Ciela's face can no longer hide how her heart races. Seizing the moment, Renos presents her with a bracelet as a parting gift. Despite her happiness at receiving such a thoughtful gesture, Ciela recognizes that it's not the time to revel in happiness with someone new, especially after just getting divorced. So she changes the topic, asking about Renos' relationship with Tyrael. Renos nervously lies about it just so he can extend the duration of their contract. Ciela promises to do her best so he can renew his engagement with Tyrael, believing that the novel's course won't change. At this moment, Renos gladly hands her an invitation to the upcoming Crimson Moon Festival, where, according to the novel, Renos makes a significant appearance. A crimson moon appears only twice a year, in the summer and winter. They say that it can awaken the power of the evil dragon. That's why the imperial family would always offer a sacrifice, wishing that the dragon would just stand by. At the same time, a festival is held to reassure the people of their safety. However, this year will be different because Renos will transform into a dragon and destroy the whole area. That's when Tyrael's divine power comes into action to turn Renos back to normal. However, Tyrael is madly in love with Duval and not with Renos. Ciela finds herself in a state of panic, even thinking if he'll be better imprisoned at this time. Clearly, she can't afford to let the imperial state be destroyed. But even if she isn't vocal with her worries, Renos understands her as if he can read her mind. With such reassuring words and a warm smile, Renos asks if she can accompany him during the Crimson Festival. Oh, how can she resist that gentle bearing? Days later, Ciela finds herself accompanying Renos in town, celebrating the Crimson Festival together. Turns out, she made an embroidery in exchange for the bracelet he gave to her last time. The way they blush towards each other makes me want to fall in love. Still, her worries linger even with his assurance about the medicine wrapped around his belly to suppress his transformation. Just then, the Crimson Moon special show about the legend of the evil dragon commences. At this time, she runs towards the opposite direction, fearing that the show will turn out. However, they still end up watching it with everyone else, and the story goes like this. Once upon a time, the evil dragon had a lover, an evil woman, who wanted to control over the power with the help of the dragon's power. However, the people found out about her plan, so they killed her to protect the peace in the world. After losing his lover, the evil dragon lost his mind and therefore ruined the empire. In the end, the 5 warriors gathered to punish the evil dragon. Right before he died, he left a deadly curse. As a revenge for his lover, his curse would forever be with the imperial family. Ciel I realizes that the curse originated 1,000 years ago, prompting her to ponder if the evil dragon had loved the woman for a millennium, patiently awaiting her reincarnation. Strangely, she finds herself envious of the evil woman, contemplating how it would feel to receive an enduring love from such a mythical creature. Just then, the scene shifts, and Ciel I finds herself in an unfamiliar place, experiencing what seems like the touch of a dragon. Unsettled by the exaggerated sensation, she implores the supposed dragon to stop, only to discover, to her embarrassment, that it was Rinos' hand and not that of a dragon. As it turns out, Ciel I had fallen asleep, and Rinos, being considerate, had caught her hand to prevent her from falling. Surprised by his own unexpected reaction, Rinos didn't anticipate her being bothered so much by the simple act. Ciel I hastily apologizes and clarifies that it was merely a dream and not about him. Later that afternoon, Rinos playfully teases her about napping during the show. This time, Ciel I confesses her envy of the evil woman and realizes that she had misunderstood the woman's intentions. The evil woman didn't seek world domination, she simply harbored genuine love for a dragon. Worries fill his eyes, and just when he's about to say something important, Duval steps up and interrupts him. How did this trash get out from the bins? Duval boldly asks for a talk with Rinos because it seems like his plan was ruined because of our majestic crown prince. Duval grabs his shoulders, thinking he can shake him, but no. The audacity of this trashy man to touch him! In front of Ciel I, Rinos calmly handles the situation, assuring her of his plan so she doesn't have to worry about anything. Ciel I believes in him, and so Rinos and Duval proceed to head into the forest to talk. He doesn't know what danger awaits him. Deep in the forest, Duval starts babbling about how penniless Rinos is, to the point where Ciel I has to buy clothes for him. Who's gonna tell this guy? Just then, Duval reveals that it got quite troublesome for him that someone is meddling with his plans, and so he proposes to give Rinos money just so he can stay away from Ciel I, further explaining how Rinos isn't suitable for their status. Rinos, who keeps silent all the time, finally makes his move from the unbearable nonsense. He reveals that he can't let anyone have Ciel I because of his desire to be with her. As Rinos' eyes turn crimson, mirroring the moon's, Duval falls down to his knees, suffocated at Rinos' mere look upon him. Rinos further implies that he can kill him immediately, but he has to be patient, considering Ciel I's fragile heart. If she'll be sad for Duval's death, then that would only spoil the mood, and so he gives him a chance to get lost before he can do something dangerous. With the dragon's ability to hypnotize people, Duval returns home with no memory of what has happened that day. Just as when Rinos thinks that the problem is solved, he suddenly feels a throbbing pain in his chest after using some power. As he's about to drink the medicine, something terrible happens and the vial breaks on the ground. Meanwhile, Ciel I has no problem with what Duval might do because, after all, he's just a trashy villain. However, she's still very concerned. As soon as she realizes that there's no sound at all and no Duval yelling out, she rushes to the forest to look for Rinos. Just then, she can't utter a word when she finds his clothes on the floor with no trace of him. However, a shadow of a huge dragon looms over her. As she embraces herself from the dragon's wrath, she hears a familiar sound. As she turns around, Rinos transforms into a cute little harmless dragon. And that, guys, is what we call Attack of the Cutie. The servants find Ciel I holding a dirty man's clothes while rushing to her room. They think that something fishy has happened between their lady and her date. Inside, Ciel I unfolds the cloth, revealing a little Rinos in his cute dragon form. She hands him a pen and a paper to make their communication understandable. Look at that cute little paw holding the pen! How can this baby harm the Empire? At that moment, Ciel I's face registers pure shock as she discovers that a kiss has the power to restore Rinos to his human form. I see what you're trying to do here, Rinos. Rinos shyly responds to her inquiries about the matter. However, this is not the main problem. Turns out he wasn't able to drink his medicine because he transformed into a dragon immediately. Also, he doesn't want her to write a letter to the Imperial Castle. No one knows, even the Emperor, that he can keep his consciousness in dragon form. All they know is the ones written in the books, which are all wrong. However, his difference is still a secret. As long as there is no Crimson Moon, he can change his form freely. Aw, that cute little paw doesn't want to ride anymore. And so Ciel offers him to stay for a while until he turns back into his human form. The little guy is so shocked. Relax, cute guy. It doesn't mean you'd be living together. Abruptly, May knocks on the door and swings it open. Fortunately, Renos quickly employs his hypnotic abilities to make May believe he's merely a winged lizard, not a dragon. Reacting swiftly, he gently slaps her hand with his tail as soon as May attempts to touch him. But when it comes to Ciel, he is as gentle as a feather. Soon after May leaves, Ciel teaches him signs so he won't be writing anymore. In the guest room, Ciel tucks him in bed, to which he cutely suggests that she should share the bed with him. Regardless of his cuteness, Ciel doesn't give up to temptation. The following day, as Ciel is about to prepare breakfast for Renos, distressing news arrives. Her parents were greatly enraged by her divorce, and if she won't reorganize it, she will be terminated. Later that day, Ciel has a rough time sorting out her problem. She vents out how her family is doing well enough without the Iset family's help, questioning as to why her parents still want to sell her to them. Also, she can't be fooled anymore. She knows very well that they want to pass the position of heir to her brother, Gerald. Still, she can't give up. That's why she has to work like crazy to earn a lot of money. Well, it's not like her family knows about her guild. Just then, Ciel starts explaining how she thought she was improving and doing well, but ended up returning to her starting point again in an instant, thinking that all she ever did turned out in vain. Renos asks for her hand and tells her not to be sad because going back to square one isn't a bad thing at all. It may be a sign that another opportunity is about to come, and who knows, it might be a chance to make up for everything she missed. Ciel, deeply touched with his words, notices that he keeps yawning. However, Renos doesn't want to go back to his room. Instead, he wants them to sleep together. This time, Ciel can no longer resist his cuteness, and so that night, they sleep together. However, Renos gets up, grabs a pen and paper, and looks at her one more time. In the letter, he promises to return soon when she needs him. That morning, Ciel wakes up without Renos in sight. She thought he wasn't the type who'd just disappear without any explanation, leaving her full of worries and strangely upset about the situation. But at least he properly bid his farewell in the form of a letter. Day after day, Ciel only misses him more, wishing that he would have told her of his return. Still, the day of the Sapphire Moon Festival Flower Imperial Party arrives, and Renos is still out of her sight. There is even no letter of invitation from him. Ciel has to make an excuse of his absence to May, who immediately judges him as someone completely unqualified for her lady. Ciel herself has no interest in going to the party, but May dresses her up well, which makes her the head turner of the party given her elegance and outstanding beauty. Oh, I hope she'll see him at the party. As soon as she enters the party, the hall fills with ill rumors about her divorce. However, Ciel isn't affected at all. In fact, she's looking forward to turning the tables pretty soon. Suddenly, someone introduces a duke named Ashleta Abshelkte. God, it's rather chaotic than Duval's mindset. Ciel can't remember a man like him, but upon seeing him, everyone bows their heads to pay respect. He has dark hair with red eyes that look like a crimson moon. However, he goes directly towards Ciel and asks her to talk for a moment. Outside, the duke asks why she's alone. Ciel reluctantly responds that she's alone by choice. Later on, she confesses that she's supposed to be with someone, but the situation isn't possible for them to meet. The Duke asks for her partner's name. Ciel answers that he's someone who resembles the Duke a lot. Suddenly, the Duke reveals that he was the one who should have been her partner for the night. With his arms around her, he tells her to look at him closely. Ciel is now getting confused. Just who is this man claiming to be her partner for the party anyway? The Duke further explains he had no other choice but to meet her this way. Also, he decided not to hide anything from her anymore and therefore asks her to trust him. In that moment, Ciel catches the familiar scent of the perfume that Renos typically wears. It dawns on her that the Duke is, in fact, Renos himself. Without hesitation, she seizes his collar, expressing her profound worry and sleepless nights because of him. Frustrated, she resorts to hitting him with her hands, but Renos responds by drawing her closer, offering reassurance that they're together now so she doesn't have to worry again. Just as she's about to grab his neck, she pauses at the sudden realization that she almost insulted the imperial family. Worried of the consequences of her actions, she shyly asks if she'll be punished by death. However, Renos just smiles, asking if it's a crime to accuse someone who couldn't sleep because she worries about him. Ciel realizes that Renos somehow changes along with his appearance. Renos somewhat agrees, stating that he always tries to help her in some way, although she can solve her problems on her own. But there's something about when they're together. Everything becomes simpler and safer. He then extends his hand, asking her to proceed inside to the hall to enjoy the party. I just noticed, Renos actually matched his outfit to her pretty dress, OMG! Meanwhile, inside the hall, two noblemen shyly greet Ciel. It's not possible that a lot of men want to greet her because of her elegance and exceptional beauty. However, one of them notices that it isn't Ciel at all. The other man agrees and apologizes for mistaking her as the Ciel they know. Still, the woman isn't even moving to excuse herself. Now they think that she's someone who has lost her mind. It turns out the woman is none other than the trashy traitor who coveted her best friend's fiancé. Tyrael keeps looking for Ciel in the crowd, not minding the nobleman who just talked behind her back. Just then, she spots her target with a handsome man as her escort. With everyone else around, Tyrael keeps acting kind, but one thing's bothering Ciel. Tyrael wears a dress that almost looks like Ciela's. Oh god, as if being a snake isn't enough. Now she's copying Ciela's fashion too? Does she have no original taste? Flashback to where it all began. Tyrael still clearly remembers the day when the rain poured heavily. Along with it, she fell into deep sadness and hunger in the slums. Ever since she was a child, her life was always a nightmare where she couldn't escape from. She didn't know why she ended up like that in the first place. At that moment, she was about to leave everything to escape, but then Ciel came. It was like a miracle that a noblewoman wanted to help her alleviate her situation. After all, Ciel was the one who took her out of the depths of living miserably. She then realized that Ciel was different from others. She exuded confidence, and she maintained a good posture all the time. Also, she had a famous fiancé. It seemed like there was nothing she could ever ask for. Seeing the perfect life Ciel had, which was totally opposite to hers, Tyrael started copying everything Ciel possessed. That's when Tyrael's greed led to the kind of person she is now. But how can she be like Ciel? Why can't she be her? It's simple, girl. A copy will always be a copy, easier to tear and replace than the original. On the other hand, Ciel knows that there is really something wrong with how Tyrael copied her dress. Her ex-friend didn't realize that she actually became a laughingstock looking like that. Tyrael's audacity doesn't stop there. She further asks Ciel's time to talk like they used to. In order to escape the noise from the crowd, criticizing Tyrael's indecent behavior, Ciel agrees to her proposal. Renos volunteers to accompany her to make sure of Ciel's safety, but she assures him that she will be right back after they finish talking. Besides, she can use her power against Tyrael if she plans on harming her. Still, Renos tells her to call him if something bad happens. On the porch, Ciel notices that not only did she copy her dress, but also her jewels. When asked what's going on, Tyrael proudly confesses that she searched for all the stores that Ciel may have purchased from. Knowing that Ciel only bought one dress, Tyrael still feels proud of herself for trying to match their dresses, even asking some praise for all her efforts. Ugh, she's crazier than Duval! Imagine, Ciel rescued her from living a miserable life, and now she has the audacity to ask if she resembles Ciel? How ungrateful! So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!